I am only tonight really learning all about what all of you, why all of you are here basically, and what all of these students do at Writopia and all of these wonderful teachers do. It's really because of Rebecca's wonderful persuasiveness that I'm here at all. And I suspect I'll be back more after talking to some of the kids who came up to talk to me tonight. Writers are forever becoming other people in the form of their characters, and in the process becoming more fully themselves. In this way, they are uniquely aligned with young people who are also engaged in becoming. Few children may grow up to become professional writers, but if they're lucky, and Rebecca tells me that this is less and less the case as funding is getting cut everywhere, but at least when I was growing up, most of us were lucky enough to be encouraged to write stories. And when we were usually told that writing was a tool we could use to express ourselves. But only a writer, one who's dedicated her life to the practice, can tell these kids now that I'm grown up, I can tell them that the need for self-expression is only part of what compels a writer and makes writing worth the struggle. That far more commanding is the need to grow that self, to deepen and expand it. What we do when we write stories, equally as children or as adults, is not express ourselves so much as create ourselves. We seize the freedom to live other lives, actualize other choices, add more dimensions to our experience, and to construct a coherent narrative we call, for lack of a better word, a self. In other words, when we write stories, we're not simply expressing what we always were, what we always thought or always felt. In our careful, often painstaking selection of words, we are choosing for ourselves who we are and who we want to be. The choice of what, of who to become is what the writers, students, and teachers in Writopia are given to discuss. I cannot stress the value of that conversation and the need for all of our support of it enough. So I think I'll read you a little bit. I'll read you a little bit from the History of Love. I was debating, but an oldie but goodie. Okay. I haven't read this for a really long time. I haven't cracked the cover of this book for a really long time. So this is a small bit called The Birth of Feeling. Just as there was a first instant when someone rubbed two sticks together to make a spark, there was a first time joy was felt, and a first time for sadness. For a while, new feelings were being invented all the time. Desire was born early, as was regret. When stubbornness was felt for the first time, it started a chain reaction, creating the feeling of resentment on the one hand and alienation and loneliness on the other. It might have been a certain counterclockwise movement of the hips that marked the birth of ecstasy, a bolt of lightning that caused the first feeling of awe. Or maybe it was the body of a girl named Alma. Contrary to logic, the feeling of surprise wasn't born immediately. It only came after the people had enough time to get used to things as they were. And when enough time had passed, and someone felt the first feeling of surprise, someone somewhere else felt the first pang of nostalgia. It's also true that sometimes people felt things, and because there was no word for them, they went unmentioned. The oldest emotion in the world may be that of being moved, but to describe it, just to name it, must have been like trying to catch something invisible. Then again, the oldest feeling in the world might simply have been confusion. Having begun to feel, people's desire to feel grew. They wanted to feel more, feel deeper, despite how much it sometimes hurt. People became addicted to feeling. They struggled to uncover new emotions. It's possible that this is how art was born. New kinds of joy were forged, along with new kinds of sadness. The eternal disappointment of life as it is, the relief of unexpected reprieve, the fear of dying. Even now, all possible feelings do not yet exist. There are still those that lie beyond our capacity and our imagination. From time to time, when a piece of music no one has ever written, or a painting no one has ever painted, or something else impossible to predict, fathom, or yet describe takes place, a new feeling enters the world. And then, for the millionth time in the history of feeling, the heart surges and absorbs the impact. And this is another small piece called The Death of Isaac Babel. Only after they charged him with the crime of silence did Babel discover how many kinds of silences existed. When he heard music, he no longer listened to the notes, but the silences in between. When he read a book, he gave himself over entirely to commas and semicolons, to the space after the period and before the capital letter of the next sentence. He discovered the places in a room where silence gathered, the folds of curtain drapes, the deep bowls of the family silver. When people spoke to him, he heard less and less of what they were saying and more of what they were not. He learned to decipher the meaning of certain silences, which is like solving a tough case without any clues, with only intuition. And no one could accuse him of not being prolific in his chosen métier. Daily, he turned out whole epics of silence. In the beginning, it had been difficult. Imagine the burden of keeping silent when your child asks you whether God exists, or the woman you love asks if you love her back. At first, Babel longed for the use of just 2 words, yes and no. But he knew that just to utter a single word would be to destroy the delicate fluency of silence. Even after they arrested him and burned all of his manuscripts, which were all blank pages, he refused to speak. Not even a groan when they gave him a blow to the head, a boot tip to the groin. Only at the last possible moment, as he faced the firing squad, did the writer Babel suddenly sense the possibility of his error. As the rifles were pointed at his chest, he wondered if what he had taken for the richness of silence was really the poverty of never being heard. He had thought the possibilities of human silence were endless, but as the bullets tore from the rifles, his body was riddled with the truth. And a small part of him laughed bitterly because, anyway, how could he have forgotten what he had always known? There's no match for the silence of God. So that's that. And just to last few words to the kids who are here tonight, for those of you who actually want to stick with it and become writers, I can tell you that it is the hardest job in the world, the very hardest job in the world, but it is the best job in the world. It really is, and every day when I sit down to my computer, after I pull most of my hair out, I think how grateful I am to be doing this. So I'm wishing you luck.